Welcome to Liesl's Artistic Studio. You know, I believe that with a little bit of guidance, anyone can create a work of art, and I am here today to help get you past any fears you may have of giving this piece a try and make it as simple and enjoyable as possible. So go grab your watercolor supplies and get ready to impress yourself. First, we need watercolor paper. Now, I do have an outline penciled in on my paper, which is, in my opinion, one of the reasons that this painting is not quite as hard as it seems. And the good news is that I have this outline available for anyone to use on my Etsy shop. All you have to do is download and print it, and then trace it onto your watercolor paper using a light table or even just a well-lit window in your house. And as a special gift to you, because I want to encourage you to give this a try, I will have this outline for sale at a 20% discount starting today and lasting for 1 week only. I'll leave a link for that in the description of this video. All right, next up I have watercolor paints, some clean water, and only one brush. This is a number 6 round with a nice pointy tip. And because of that, I think I can paint this entire piece with just this one brush. This, as you are probably aware by now, is one of my own personally designed Craftamo brushes that come from a set of 5 that will soon be available for purchase. And as an update, I think at the moment October is looking like the lucky month that these limited time sets will be ready to launch. I will leave a link for the notification of these brushes in the description of this video, along with the rest of the supplies you'll see me using today. Now, I'm just quickly going to tape my paper down, and that is all we need to get started. So we're going to kind of work our way from the background up to the foreground today. So let's get a few colors on our tray for a little splash of color for a bit of background wash. Now I want these colors to sort of match or be cohesive with the colors I plan to paint the flowers with later. That way everything will kind of tie in. So first I've pulled out 2 different greens, a sap green and a hooker's green, which is a little bit darker and more of a cool green compared to the sap green. Then I've got some ultramarine blue and maybe even just a little bit of dioxazine purple. I want this wash to be fairly light in value as well as very blended from color to color. So I'm going to paint this using the wet on wet technique to help with that. Here I'm just painting some water in the areas where I want the color to run. You'll see some thin lines as a guide for this on my outline that can help you with this a little bit. Now, I am kind of painting this water around some of these leaves down here. You could probably just go ahead and paint right over these leaves if it's easier for you. You're just going to need to make sure that you paint the leaves with a darker valued color later if you choose to paint over them right now. Then after I've got the water in place, I can start adding in the color. Now, you can do this in literally whatever way you want to, but if you'd like to follow along with me, I'm throwing a little bit of the purple in here first. Then I will transition to a little bit of blue right next to the purple, and then I will move on to the greens next to the blues. Right now, as I'm painting along the edges, I'm kind of trying to keep the colors very soft, very blended, and lighter in value. So if you need to, add in some extra water to help you achieve this look. And then as I start moving the color up into the inside or center of the page here, I'm going to make my colors more concentrated and dark in value. I'll continue adding in whatever greens, blues, and purples, however I feel like they will blend or look good until this space is filled with color. And I may even come back in here and darken up the center area even more if it needs it. All right, well done. I'm just going to soften up some of these edges a little bit more by dabbing them with a paper towel. Okay, moving on, let's paint in one more area filled with a little bit of background wash color, more in the center of the page here, in between some of these flowers. I'll do this in a similar way as we just did, painting on the water first and then adding in a variety of these colors, with the colors being a little lighter in value nearer to the edges and darker in value at the center. Okay, pretty good start, I would say. So let's begin painting in some of the smaller flowers now that are more in the background of the bouquet or the accent flowers. I'm going to just mix together the blue and purple I have here on my tray for sort of a blue-violet color. Then I'll begin painting in the little flowers on the sides of this flower stalk. Nothing too intense here. These are a little more loose or free looking in their appearance, really just small blobs of color if you look at them. To give these little flowers a little more depth though, I am going to come back in here and add in some extra darker color at the bottom points of the flowers while they're still a little wet. All right, while we let that dry a little bit, let's move on to the next little set of flowers. This time I'm looking for a nice golden yellow. So let's pull out a little bit of this gamboge for this. I'll go ahead and paint in these other background flowers, sort of like we just did. These again are really blobby or loose shapes, but they still get the idea of a flower across. They fill in the gaps and they're a nice snap of color into this piece. Then, just like we did with the previous flowers, after I've painted the main base coat of color, I'll take a darker, more concentrated gamboge and add in some extra color at the base of each flower. While I've got some of this yellow color out and in my brush, I'm going to paint in a few of these little splatter marks around the outside of the bouquet. Later I will add some splatters that are a little more loose and carefree, but I do have some of these more strategically placed. All right, moving on now, let's pull out a little bit of alizarin crimson here and use a bit of this color to paint in these last two small little buds off to the right side. This first one is turning out pretty dark, which is fine, but I'm going to paint the next one a little bit more watered down just to change things up a bit. Now to finish off the background area, all we need to do is paint in some of the greenery. So using some of the green that's already on my tray, I'll probably use both of these two different greens at some point, but I'll go ahead and start out with some of the sap green and paint in some of these little branches of leaves. I hope you're enjoying this painting so far. I think you'll feel very pleased and accomplished at the end result. If you are enjoying my painting and teaching style, I hope you'll subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any of my new and upcoming weekly tutorials. I think I'll go ahead and change things up now and pull out some of the hooker's green for the next few leaves. And for this big leaf here, let's try a gradient of color, starting out with the lighter sap green at the tip and then moving to the darker hooker's green near the bottom, blending the two colors together where they touch. All right, there's a few leaves left. I'll again use the hooker's green for the next few and make them nice and dark. Well done! Moving on, let's get ready to paint in some of the stems on this page by first adding in a bit of greenery here at the base of some of these flowers. I'm painting these using a nice, dark, concentrated hooker's green. Now that that is done, we can go ahead and add in any of the stems on the page. Now, because this brush has such a nice point to it, I'm going to go ahead and paint in these thin stem lines using this same brush. It does take a steady and light touch of the hand though, so if you feel like you're struggling with this using the more medium-sized brush, please feel free to switch over to a smaller size or even a liner or rigger brush. While I'm painting in this stem here, I'm going to take some sap green and maybe even a touch of gamboge to finish off this top area of the flower. And then I'll also add in the little stems going from the flowers to the main stem. Very good. Let's go ahead and finish off this background area by adding in a few more splatter marks around the edge. I'll just use some of these colors already on my tray, some blue, purple, and maybe even some green. Now that I've got my more strategically placed dots of color on here, I'm going to add in some smaller, more carefree splatters as well. I'll just take a scrap paper here and cover up some of the areas that I don't want the splatters to spread to. Then I'll apply some paint to my brush and tap my brush against another to jar some of this paint loose, letting it go where it wants to go. I'll probably use a variety of colors for this as well, and it's really up to you to choose how many or how few you have. Okay, that is a big portion of this painting done. The only thing left to do at this point is paint in the 3 larger foreground flowers now. So really quickly though, I'm going to switch out my water for some clean water so I don't contaminate the upcoming flower petal colors. This is going to help keep them nice and bright. Now, as always, you can use whatever colors you would like for these next few flowers. After all, you are the artist here. But if you'd like to follow along with me, for this first flower, I'm going to add just a touch of cadmium red to some of this gamboge color to create a nice yellow-orange. Now, if you ever feel like you added too much of that red, all you have to do is add a little bit more gamboge to tone it down. Now, for most of this painting up until now, with the exception of the initial background wash, I've been painting this mostly wet on dry. But now that I'm getting to these larger petals, I'm going to paint them wet on wet so that I can get the colors to spread and blend together a little bit easier. I'm going to start with the petals down on this flower in the bottom corner by painting on some water first. Then I'll add a base color of the yellow-orange. This is a little bit watered down, so it is lighter in value to start with. Then while that is still wet, I'm going to add some darker red-orange starting at the base of the petal or the part nearest the center of the flower. I'm going to use some of this alizarin crimson on my palette that I've mixed into a portion of the yellow-orange. I'm kind of blending that color into the middle area of the petal, but I'm still keeping the darkest part at the bottom. I'll go ahead and paint the remaining petals in the same way, but you'll notice that I am skipping every other petal to give them a bit of a chance to dry before I paint right next to it so the paint won't bleed into each other. All right, that is a great start for that flower. We'll let that dry, then come back in here later and paint in the center. But while we wait for that, and while we've got this nice yellow-orange color out, let's paint in the center area of this flower right over here with some simple dots of color. Okay, let's give that a minute to dry, and while we wait, we'll paint the side-facing flower up at the top of the bouquet. For this one, we're just going to adjust the color here a little bit and add in even more alizarin crimson to the gamboge so that the base color for this flower will be a little more orange than the first one. So again, just like we did before, we'll paint the petal with water first, then we'll add in the darker yellow-orange mixture. And then while that paint is still a little wet, we'll add in some alizarin crimson at the bottom area of the petal closest to the center of the flower. I'm going to go ahead and paint all of these petals in the same way. Well done. But before moving on to the final flower, let's mix up a little bit of burnt umber and ivory black for a nice dark brown color and come back in here and paint the center of this bottom flower now that the petals are dry. Okay, moving on to the last flower. I'm just going to use some pure alizarin crimson for this one, but I will be using a variety of values to help me separate and define the individual petals. Once again, I'll paint this wet on wet to start, then I'll add in some lighter or more watered down alizarin crimson for the base color. Then after that base coat is down and while it's still wet, I'll go ahead and add in some darker alizarin crimson. You know, I've really just been painting each of these three main flowers in the same way and with the same technique, only just with different colors. This painting really isn't super hard when you can just break it down into steps and do it piece by piece and section by section. And I believe the outline drawing really helps with this. You're really able to just focus on one section at a time. Now you'll notice with this that again I'm skipping around from petal to petal to allow sections to dry before I paint right next to them. And keep in mind here to kind of make each petal a little different than the one it's sitting right next to, so they sort of stand out on their own rather than blending in all together. All right, terrific job here. For the final little detail to this piece, I'm going to take a touch of that dark brown that's already on our palette and add just a touch of that to the very center of this flower, and then we can call this painting done. I really love how this painting turned out. It's bright, colorful and happy, yet it also is very cohesive. This is an enjoyable and beautiful little painting to try out, and I'm so glad you joined me today. I hope you had some fun and maybe even learned something new. If you did enjoy this tutorial, I hope you'll consider subscribing to my channel so I can continue to help you discover your artistic side.